Let me name something that a lot of people are feeling right now. You are more affected by things. Noise hits you faster. People's moods linger longer. Misalignment is impossible to ignore. What used to roll off you does not roll off you anymore. You have less tolerance for chaos, you have less patience for rushing, and you have less energy for explaining yourself. And at the same time, you're craving things you didn't need before. Quiet, slowness, honesty from yourself and also from others. And if you are being honest, there is a part of you that is confused in all of this because you have done the work. You have regulated. You have quote unquote healed. So why do you feel more sensitive right now? A lot of people think this means that something is wrong. They tell themselves that I should be tougher by now. I thought healing was supposed to make this so much easier. So why can't I handle what I used to be able to handle? I just want to stop you right there. If you feel more sensitive right now, it may not be because you are weaker, but because your system is finally precise. This isn't regression. It is refinement. What is happening isn't that you are losing resilience. It is that your nervous system no longer numbs, it no longer overrides, or it doesn't filter the way it used to. What you're feeling is accurate, and that can be disorienting if no one told you this phase was coming. So in this episode, we're going to talk about why sensitivity often increases after healing and why that is actually a sign of nervous system health, and how to live in this phase without thinking that you need to fix yourself. Nothing is wrong with you. Your system is just telling the truth right now. And there is a myth in the nervous system world that no one really questions. It's that this idea that if you regulate enough, you will become tougher, thicker skin, less affected, more unshakable. People imagine regulation as emotional armor. That once you have healed, things won't touch you anymore. But that is not how it actually works. What most people call resilience was often just numbing. It was dissociation that looked like strength, suppression that looked like stability, or endurance that looked like maturity. So when you finally regulate, and I mean really regulate, something unexpected happens. You don't become less sensitive. You become available. And that is where the confusion kind of starts. And when people say things like, I'm calmer, but I can't tolerate what I used to. I feel more, not less. Why does everything feel louder now? The sounds, the energy in rooms, the emotional tone of conversations, things register faster. Not because you are fragile, but because your system is no longer buffering reality. This is the part no one prepares you for. True regulation doesn't blunt sensation. It clarifies it. It removes the fog. It brings you out of survival mode where sensation had to be dampened to get through. And suddenly, your body is actually here. So the world feels different. Maybe not harsher, it just feels clearer. So regulation doesn't make you less sensitive, I am sorry. It makes you less dissociated. And that is why things you used to tolerate now feel misaligned. That is why chaos feels so much heavier, and why rushing feels intrusive, and why emotional incongruence stands out immediately. Your system is not breaking. It is waking up. And once you understand that, then also the disappointment will soften because you will realize that you didn't lose resilience, you lost numbness. This is pure biology. When the nervous system is dysregulated, its primary job is survival, and survival requires filtering. So therefore, sensations, they get dampened and awareness narrows, and the system prioritizes what is necessary to get through the moment. And that is why in survival states, people often feel less connected to their body and they feel emotionally muted or flat. They're able to tolerate things that don't actually feel good. Not because those things are okay, but because feeling them fully would be too costly. Survival overrides perception. It has to. Now, when regulation increases, when the system feels safer, the filtering is no longer needed. So something else happens. That perception, it widens. Subtle signal starts to return, and the body no longer has to conserve energy by numbing experience. It can finally feel again. And this is where people get confused, because feeling more does not always feel pleasant at first. It feels clear. Music hits deeper, not just emotionally, but physically. You feel it in your chest, your breath, your nervous system. Disharmony becomes intolerable. It becomes more obvious. Like you walk into a room and immediately you sense there is some tension. You hear the incongruence in someone's words, and your body knows before your mind catches up. And your no shows up faster, not as thought, but as sensation, like a tightening, a pulling back, a subtle resistance that wasn't there before. This is not overwhelm. It is accuracy, because your system isn't flooding you with sensation, it is delivering information without distortion. Sensitivity isn't overload, it is restored signal. The volume didn't increase, the interference dropped. So now you are hearing what was always there. It was just filtered out before, but now it is clear. And once you understand this, the experience changes. Because instead of asking, why am I so sensitive? You start asking, what is my body noticing now that it couldn't afford to notice before? That is not fragility. That is a nervous system just coming back online. And when your body is online, it becomes one of the most precise sources of guidance you have, because it is so honest. And usually this moment is when people start to turn on themselves, because sensitivity in our culture, it gets confused with fragility. So when you start feeling more, a quiet fear creeps in. You think things like, am I becoming too sensitive for this world? Why can't I push through like I used to? Did I lose my edge? Am I regressing? And no one tells you what is actually happening. So you assume something is wrong. But let me name it for you. Let me name it clearly. What you are losing is not strength. You are losing numbness. And that can feel scary if numbness was how you survived. Because for a long time, tolerance looked like maturity, and pushing through looked like resilience. Suppressing reaction looked like emotional intelligence, but much of that was not regulation. It was adaptation under pressure. Your old tolerance was often dissociation, your old strength was probably suppression, and that old resilience was survival-based. It worked until it didn't. So when your nervous system starts to regulate, those strategies fall away. And without those strategies, things feel exposed. And not because you are weaker, but because you are no longer buffering reality. You didn't lose resilience, you outgrew numbness. And outgrowing numbness can feel very vulnerable because you are now meeting life without an armor. But that does not make you incapable. It makes you honest. You are not breaking down. You are reorganizing around truth instead of going around that endurance. And once you see that, self-judgment starts to loosen its grip, because this phase isn't regression, it is transition. You haven't lost yourself, you have changed the way you meet the world. And this is where we need to get very precise, because a lot of people mislabel what they are experiencing. They feel more sensitive and immediately assume, oh, I must be dysregulated. But those two states are not the same. Dysregulation is chaotic, it is flooding, it is confusion. You don't know what you need, you don't know what is wrong, your system is loud, but it is very unclear. Sensitivity is different, but I understand why it can feel confusing. But sensitivity is clean, it is immediate, it is orienting, and it doesn't overwhelm, it directs. With sensitivity, your body just knows. It knows quickly, not dramatically, not emotionally, just clearly. You feel when something does not fit before it turns into exhaustion. You sense misalignment before burnout forces you to stop. You leave sooner, not because you are overwhelmed, but because if you stay longer, that won't make sense. And you say no without a story, without justification, without rehearsing it in your head. That is not collapse, that is discernment. Dysregulation is just scrambles the signal. Meanwhile, sensitivity sharpens it. Sensitivity tells you what fits. Meanwhile, dysregulation just tells you that something is wrong. You don't know what is wrong, just something is wrong. If your experience feels clarifying, if it leads to cleaner decision, if it reduces inner conflicts, you are not dysregulated. You're regulated enough to notice, and that is an important shift. Because once you stop pathologizing sensitivity, you stop trying to fix something that is actually guiding you. You stop overriding information that is meant to help you orient. You start trusting your system again, not because it's calm, but because it is accurate this time. And accuracy is one of the deepest signs of nervous system health. This is the phase where your intuition gets quieter, but it also gets so much more reliable. And learning to trust this version of your sensitivity changes how you move through everything that will come next. And that can feel a little bit unsettling at first. It starts to feel like the world got louder, like people move faster, talk more, demand more, like everything is slightly too much. And it is easy to assume that I have changed and I can't handle life like I used to. Maybe I've become less adaptable. But let's be clear, the world didn't get harsher. Your filter changed. And when you were in survival, your nervous system buffered a lot. It filtered out that noise, it dampened stimulation, and it tolerated intensity because intensity for you was familiar. You needed it to function. But now that your system is more regulated, that buffering is not there anymore. So you are experiencing life directly. And direct contact can feel loud. Like fast-paced conversations start to feel like jarring, not because you are slow, but because your system no longer wants to rush. Overstimulating environments drain you faster, not because you are weak, but because you're no longer dissociated inside them. Performative energy feels heavy because your system recognizes incongruence instantly. You no longer need intensity to feel alive, and that is a big shift. For a long time, intensity may have been how you felt connected, how you felt motivated, how you felt something. So when your nervous system calms down, anything loud, rushed, or performative, it will stand out immediately. A regulated nervous system does not adapt to chaos. It notices the chaos. It doesn't mean you need to withdraw from your life. It means that you are no longer shaped by environments that require you to override yourself. You are not rejecting the world. You are seeing it clearly. And once that clarity arrives, it is very hard to unsee. That is not a loss, that is discernment. And learning how to live from that discernment without apologizing for it is part of what this phase is here to teach you. And this is where a lot of people reach for coping strategies. They ask, how do I manage this? How do I toughen up again? How do I protect myself from feeling so much? But this kind of sensitivity, that is not something to manage. It is something to honor. Because the moment you treat it like a problem, you start building an armor. And armor always costs you intimacy with yourself. You don't need thicker skin. You need cleaner environments. And that may show up in quiet, practical ways. You may notice you choose less. Fewer plans, fewer conversations that require explanation, fewer spaces where you have to override your body to belong. You may protect your energy earlier. Not dramatically, not defensively, just earlier. You leave before exhaustion sets in. You say no before resentment builds. You rest before collapse forces you to rest. And you may stop negotiating with your body. You stop arguing with the no. You stop justifying discomfort. You stop convincing yourself to stay where you have already checked out. That is not avoidance. That is respect. That is self-respect. Sensitivity becomes a gift when you stop apologizing for it, when you stop explaining why you need what you need, when you stop trying to make your system fit into environments it has clearly outgrown. When you trust that what your body is signaling is not inconvenience, but it is information. You don't have to harden yourself to live well. You get to refine your lives so your sensitivity has space to breathe. And when you do, this phase stops feeling like something you need to fix and it starts feeling like something you are finally allowed to keep. When you stop fighting this sensitivity, something else becomes so clear. This phase is absolutely not shrinking your life. What it is doing is that it is refining it. And you may notice that your circle is getting smaller, but your circle will also get much more deeper. Because you are no longer available for connections that require you to perform or override yourself. You choose resonance over proximity. You feel safer being seen by fewer people who actually meet you. Your decisions get clearer, cleaner. You don't need to analyze as much. You don't need external validation to move. Your body knows, and you know to listen. So your self-trust returns, and you act without the inner debate, and you stop second-guessing what already feels true. And your tolerance for misalignment drops to the ground. You don't endure what drains you. You don't rationalize what doesn't fit. You don't stay where your body has already said no. This is refinement. Refinement of your energy, your time, your relationships, your direction. You're not becoming more sensitive to life. You're becoming more precise about how you live your life. And that precision is what allows you to build a life that doesn't require you to harden yourself to stay in it. And before you move on with your day, just let this land. Not everything you feel needs to turn into action. Not everything needs to be understood right away. If this episode resonated, it doesn't mean something is missing. It means something is being revealed. This phase you are in is not a problem. It is not something to fix or correct. You are becoming attuned. And sensitivity in this context is not weakness. It is information. It is your nervous system telling the truth without filtering, without numbing, or without overriding your body. You don't need to harden yourself to move forward. You don't need to go back to who you were to be functional. You are being invited to live with more honesty in your choices, in your relationships, in your pace. So instead of asking, how do I toughen up? You might sit with this question instead. What if this sensitivity is not asking you to toughen up, but to listen more closely? You don't need to answer that today. Just notice what changes when you stop resisting what your body's showing you. And until next time, stay aligned, stay curious, and most important of all, stay true to yourself.